Therapy, I felt that for me at the time it was unreachable.
Mm.
And I also think that's a thing that a lot of people feel when they're navigating things in their life or trauma. And for
Mm.
me, I believe that everyone needs to believe in something. If it's
Yes.
God, if it's the universe, if it's whoever you believe in,
Mm.
whatever gods you believe in, that we all need to believe in something to have
Yes.
grounding and connection. And for me, I
Mm.
learned meditation. I learned how to connect with my body, how to listen to my body, which again, talking about
Oh.
sexual assault and trauma, a lot
Mm.
of us lose that part, that connection with our body. So I learned that. And now I do talk therapy. Love my therapist. She holds me down. She's amazing. But that's the route I took first.
So, I mean, how did you reach there? Like, did you have a teacher? Did you have a guide?
I
Did you,
did.
you did?
Yeah, I please. It took me so long to figure out how to just sit down and meditate and tell my brain to stop talking. Um, I definitely had someone that was patient and would teach me and talk to me and taught me about my chakras and like alignment. And I grew up going to church and I was like, some of this is not quite for me, but I love the spirituality and the understanding and the connection and again believing in something. So I kind of went back to those roots
Right.
and pulled out the things that felt good for me.
Lovely, lovely. I remember the first time I sat down to meditate and the person told me, close your eyes. And I'm like, no, I never close my eyes. I even sleep with my eyes open. I'm not going to close my eyes. So it was scary to just sit down with your eyes closed, you know. So it's
Yeah.
quite a journey and I applaud your journey. So do you bring it together, spirituality and therapy, in the way you kind of be with the people who you support?
Yeah, I
You do.
definitely do. Yeah, so I went back to school for my master's is in health psychology, looking at people as whole, as we should,
Mm.
holistically.
Right.
Um, and I also just finished, because I love school apparently, I just finished a certificate in alternative medicine. And
Oh,
so I like to look at people holistically as a whole person, right? And also, like, again, knowing that it's helpful to have roots, have something to
yes.
believe in. And so we talk about that and
Yeah.
figuring out like what feels good for them, not telling them what they should do, but
Yeah.
instead seeing what feels good for them. Like, what do
Yeah.
you believe in?
Yeah.
Okay, let's navigate that.
Yeah. That's what we actually forget, you know. We forget to connect with ourselves and our roots, and we just like groping everywhere outside, externally, and then we meet people who tell us what to do and say this is the
Yeah.
way to do it, and there's only one road to over there. So we
Yeah.
go wrong so many ways. We go wrong so
Yeah,
many ways.
yeah, and I think that's the struggle that a lot of people find with like talk therapy
Yeah.
is that there's some therapists that only work one way,
Yeah.
and I'm like absolutely not. I can't work with five people the same way because everyone's journey is different. Everyone receives information and support and their trauma is different. So that doesn't
Correct.
work.
Yeah, because the story is different, their situation is different, their response, their body is different, how you
Absolutely.
remember is different. So true.
Absolutely.
Wow. Doesn't that exhaust you? I mean, you are exhausted right now because of all the other things that we talked about in the way, but just this work that you do day in and day out, holding someone's, what should I say, life experience. I don't want to just limit it to say trauma, but I would say holding someone's life experience with so much care. It requires a lot of energy. It's you really have to empty yourself to make space for that, right?
Yes.
How do you do that?
um, for a long time, I didn't know how, and I was burning out. Like I would just not be able, we were talking about getting out of bed. Like I was not able to get out of bed. So I took time. I did a 10-day silent retreat.
You did.
Yeah, it was the most amazing thing I've ever done. And that's where I learned how to, again, relearn how to look back in and listen to my body and
Mm.
give myself that permission that when my body says you need a break, I take the
Mhm.
break.
Yeah.
When it says stop, I stop. When it says drink water, I drink water. So the burnout is real, right? If you don't listen, but also I keep people around me that support me and also can see the things I can't see, and they're like, you need a break.
Mm.
I stretch, I go outside, I take myself away from everything at least once every quarter.
Mm.
Um, just maybe a day. Most of the time it's like a week. And I'm like, just
Ah,
no one talk to me because I love this work so much. Like
yes.
it's not only saved my life, but I hear that people say that I've helped save their life, and to hear that day in and day out, like
Mm.
it's amazing. Like
Yes.
it's beyond my wildest dreams. So I also take that into account, that if I burn out, I can't continue to live beyond my wildest dreams.
Right. But it's also such a huge responsibility, isn't it?
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you're offering this and people are accepting it and relating to it and benefiting from it. And that just makes it even more important for you to take responsibility for yourself, because if you don't nurture yourself, then all of this gets compromised.
1000%. 1000%.
So how do you make yourself happy? Like, what is your go-to happy place
Hmm.
or go-to happy action, doing activity? I don't know, space. I don't know, anything. Go-to happy place.
My okay. My go-to happy place is dancing in my underwear. It's it's watching professional wrestling.
Wow.
It's hanging out with my goddaughters, hanging
Yeah,
out with my best friends, hanging out with little puppies, going
lovely.
outside and just sitting and like observing how others move through the world and going, whoop, that's not me, thank goodness. That sometimes just being like, you know what, brain, we're not even going to listen to ourselves. We're going to see what other people are doing. That's where I find happiness. And also food. I love to cook. I love to eat.
What's your favorite?
It varies depending on the day. I've grown up loving pasta,
Mm-hmm.
sushi,
Mm-hmm.
um, anything that's not the American food, burgers and things. I'm like, anything outside of that is my favorite.
Okay, so I'm such an Indian. I'm such an Indian that whenever I travel, I'm only looking for Indian food, you know. I mean, I remember this time I was in Barcelona and I was going crazy because I just couldn't figure out any Indian food over there. And then I found this little Pakistani store and I was like, I can smell Indian curries. I can And that was a poor man's home cooked food for himself. I said, listen, I don't care. Take my money, but give me your home food, you know.
You're like, just a bowl, please.
Just a little bit. Right. So yeah, food is really a go-to place for me as well. A lot, a lot. Right.
Mm.
So you have this tending the garden. What? Tell me
Mhm.
about this initiative.
Um, so working in mental health facilities, I saw a lot of harm. And it's supposed to be these places where people go to get healed. But if they, well, I'll just say it, if they weren't white, the harm was more intense towards them. And I was like, well, hold on now. um, Not white. I'm seeing what's happening. And so at the 10-day silent retreat, you can't read, you can't write, you can't do, you just sit and meditate. And so the first day I came up with, I wanted to create a space where people could be seen, supported, and heard
Oh,
in places where they didn't have to teach or educate, where they get to show up and just be held, where they get to be supported by people that look like them, where they get to just be and they don't have to perform. And so I'm reworking this language, but for folks that have been marginalized, this is
mm,
who tending the garden is for. For those that maybe couldn't afford these, I've worked in facilities that are $50,000 for 30 days. And I'm like, that's beyond. That's some people's salaries for 2 years, a year,
yes,
three
yes,
years.
absolutely.
So creating healing spaces that are affordable
Mm,
um, has been my goal. So last year we were supposed to do the first in person. It didn't work out for many of reasons, COVID being one of the main reasons. But we
mm-hmm,
got to hold an online summit this year
mm-hmm,
for survivors, Most of the teachers were survivors. It was so beautiful. We have it online if folks still want to check it out and buy it. But
Mm,
it was so amazing to be able
absolutely.
to do that. And, hopefully
Mm,
with the world being what it is, random and all over, that we get to do the in person in 2022 and still do online. We're working on education stuff for survivors, we're working on education stuff for the youth, because
mm,
I feel like people only want to talk to survivors when they're adults. But as we know, a
mm.
lot of harm is done when folks are young, when they don't have voices, or people overlook them, or people are hoping that they're overlooked, right?
Mm.
And so we're creating different things in that capacity as well. And it's so
Yeah,
fun. It's so fun.
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. I congratulate you on that. And I
Thank you.
hope that we can do some things together there because from Sakshi, we also have embarked on this really ambitious aspirational program of reaching out to 4 million youth across the country in all
Oh, I love it.
states and actually talk to them about just these very things. How do you build safe spaces? How do you kind of
Mhm.
create healing spaces? How do you create an environment where you can actually prevent harm from happening? So what is it that you can do? Not big things. I'm not talking policies or laws. We're talking about the small acts that we can do in our everyday life. What is it that we can do over there? So I would love to talk to you more about that at some
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that. I think that sounds amazing, because I think people feel very helpless, like I just can't do anything, like it's bigger than me. But it's looking at the macro and the micro. The micro
Yes.
still matters because it adds up
Yes.
to helping the bigger cosm, the bigger macro things. Like everything helps, even when we
Yes.
don't think
Everything.
so. But there
Yeah.
are things that we can do, and there's ways that we can show up for folks, and then we can also leave things for folks. I say, like, leave crumbs for people to pick up when they're ready.
Absolutely. Breadcrumb it all the way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're talking about this macro thing, that micro to macro. So you have this collective healing that you talk about in your talks, in your conversations. Um, just expand that for us. What is it that
Yeah.
you want to say when you talk about this collective healing?
Well, humans aren't meant to be singular. We're meant to be in community. We're meant to be in a collective and support each other. And so we're all responsible for each other, right? Like if we are in a community and there is someone that's causing harm, we all need to hold this person accountable.
Yeah.
We all need to speak up. We all need to show up for individuals. We all need to stop questioning folks and believing folks, right? Like, so when I look at it as like a collective, I'm thinking of, you know, the bigger collective of like the city, then your area that you live in, maybe even that's just your family. Some people have really large families or
Yes.
extended family, right? Like looking at all of that, but also navigating where the safe spaces are. And when I
Mm.
look at safety, people think it's like, oh, am I safe over here? Is someone directly harming me? But I look at it as internal and external safety. Like,
Yes.
how are we helping the outside, right? Like, how are we keeping people physically safe? But how are we also keeping people emotionally safe? Like, how are we showing up in that capacity? Like, how is their heart? How are they thinking? How are they feeling? Like, what kind of harm like that is also happening? And how can we show up in that way? Right? Like, what type of language would, even just the language, like that's small, but like, how does language allow people to feel safe?
Yeah. Yeah. Very important. I mean, and that's on the face of it, it's so simple. It's just language, right? I mean, it's something that we're doing all the time. But there's
Mm-hmm.
so much power in the words we speak in either supporting a person or completely destroying the person.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And
Words mean
that's
things.
something, words mean things, of course. They mean things and they mean deep things.
Yes.
Yeah. And language plays such an important role when we build stigma, especially around sexual assault, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, and you do a lot of work. And so, if you don't mind me asking you, You said you're a survivor of sexual assault from your
Mm-hmm.
teens. Yeah? I'm also a survivor, for demanding. But no, jokes apart. Uh, did you have any difficulty in? Did you face any barriers or difficulty in articulating it? Were you able to talk about it?
Not for years. Not for years. So I was 21 when it happened. But I always say this is the tricky part that some people, again, because language, I've been raped once, but I've been sexually assaulted more times than I can account for. Right? Because words mean things. And when people are like, oh, sexual assault, I'm like, that's the umbrella. And rape is underneath it. It is a form of sexual assault. And so I didn't tell my friends and family until I was 28. So that's 7 years that I was holding it. I was struggling. I was spiraling. I was drinking tons of alcohol. I was fighting people. It was bad until I was able to figure out what was going on. And I was working to flip that switch. And then I was able to have the language. And now I won't shut up about it, right? But it took a long time to find it. And I think it's so hard. And when people are like, well, why don't you just say something? Why didn't you say something? Like, it's not that easy. It's not that easy.
That's so true. It's not so easy. So now when you work with people who come to you with their stories, how do you handhold them? And like you said, every story is different. So I'm not asking for a generic template, but generally, what is your approach? How do you build the ease of this language? How do you enable them with this language to be able to articulate that which is inside and chaotic? How do you?
Yeah. Well, first, I let them know that I'm not here to judge them and that no matter what they say, I believe you. I've never had to be there. I don't need to have ever met you.
Very important words. I believe you. 3 words.
Absolutely.
Very important.
Simple. Put a
Very
period
simple.
on it. Exclamation mark. Yeah. So from there, it's, what would you like to share with me? Let's start somewhere. So when I work with folks when I'm doing direct work in a three month period. So the first month is getting to know that person, figuring out what has happened to them, what information they want to share with me. And then the second month is seeing what they've been doing for themselves and what's been working and what's not been working. And then I introduce different things that work for that person, that feel good for that person. Like, let's try this. Hate it? Cool. Let's try something else. And then the third month is really just getting that person comfortable and back into their body and feeling like they have tools, right? Like, there's no, like, we're not just healed. I'm so tired of being like, well, how healed are you? That's annoying. But like, here's the tools to navigate, because as we started this conversation, it always lives within us.
Yes.
We can't just take it and just be like, all right, that trauma over there, gonna let that go. Like, it doesn't work that way. And so how do we get out of bed every day? How do we
Yeah.
feed ourselves? How do we navigate, and I'm going to say it, a world where we are not believed, where we are not seen, but there's so many of us, which is
Yeah.
so baffling to me every day.
Yeah, isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, when you say 1 in 3, I mean, there's 2 of us over here, and then there's a third person who probably has escaped this. But how is it that we are so invisible, or what the experience is so invisible or immaterial that nobody wants to pay attention to it? And who is this nobody? Like, who is this people who are in charge of all of what needs to be done who are ignoring us? And these are, sorry, I can also go on
No,
about
I'm
it
like,
because
these
it's,
people, the governments, and this is a whole big conversation I know we can really get into, but it's
yeah,
also the people that are holding this space are 9 times out of 10 the people that are causing the harm.
yeah, absolutely.
It's it's a mess.
It's a mess.
Like, we're smiling right now talking about trauma, but also understanding that sometimes the smiling is the easiest thing we can do.
Yeah. And this should not be taken as weakness or vulnerability or giving up
No,
or
no.
accepting.
No, but I
It
think it's
is,
also the reminder that we are allowed to laugh and smile. Because
yes.
sometimes people are like, "Oh my God, you've been assaulted, you've been raped, you're a survivor, you're this. Aren't you sad?" Like, I mean, I can't be sad every day, honey. I have things to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I will at some point share a small little work in progress video, backstage video that we did, somebody made while I was working with survivors of absolutely third degree domestic violence. And
Mm,
they were dancing and laughing and playing music and beating the drum and, owning the space. And every time I look at it, it just brings tears to my eyes, because here are people who are saying we're not going to get bound by the violence that we have suffered. We
yeah.
have trauma, but we'll deal with it and we will figure it out every single day, but we're not going to be defined just by that violence.
I always say it's a part of us. It's not all of us. It might
It's
be a
not,
chapter, a page in our story, but it's not the
yeah,
whole book.
it's not the whole book, really. So you've also been doing some really fun segments in your page, like Self-Care Thursday, Motivation Monday, and things
Mm.
like that. So what was your motivation and self-care technique this week?
um, I didn't do one online because I was taking care of myself. So that was that was the self-care. It was staying away from my phone.
Yeah.
Um, and then I actually, you reminded me, actually, I was like, I do want to get back to the self-care Thursdays because I've been taking time from it.
Mm,
But for my self-care, it
mm.
was taking a nap today, just laying on my floor and taking a nap, just laying down, right? Feeding myself. I
Yeah.
drink this huge thing. I try to drink 1 to 2 of these a day. Like that
Right.
is self-care, hydrating my body,
Yes. Yes.
listening to my body.
Yes.
But my motivation lately has just been, and it's been somewhat similar, and I'll give you the secret. My
Mm.
motivation Monday is literally the things I need to be motivated to do. So it's literally like,
So give me
have
some
you,
examples. Yeah.
yeah, learning how to ask for help, like motivating people to ask for help because they deserve it.
Mm.
Telling that little voice in the back of your head to shut up,
Mm.
right? Like, I want to motivate people to go outside and just get some of this actual air outside. It might be hot, so don't stay out there too long. We don't want you to pass out. But go outside, find
Mm.
some nature, right? Like for me, water is healing, and I know it's not as accessible to everyone, but I'm in California and I will drive to a beach.
Mm.
So doing things like that, but motivating people to look and figure out what
Mm.
feels good for you, not what feels good for everyone else. Like,
Mm.
stop chasing what you see on Instagram. Fun fact, everyone, Instagram is curated. It's a show. It's all a show. This is why I try to be like, today was crap. And people are like,
Yeah.
oh my God, thank you for saying that. And I'm like, yeah, it's not always fun.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have this makeup on because I did a video shoot earlier today. I don't look like this all the time. Let's be real. Like, so reminding people and motivating them to be honest with themselves,
Yeah.
as I need to always.
It's so important. It is something that we just tend to forget most of the time, or we just get very hesitant about speaking about it, because it's like, oh my God, I'm revealing myself, and what are people going to think? Or I think the bigger fear also is that we fear that people will fix that as a template for us. You know,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
fix that as a template that, oh, she's weak, or she's vulnerable, or she's so come out as strong, come out on top of it, come out as successful all the time seems to become the trope. And that's
Yeah.
so damaging. It's so damaging because it doesn't really allow us to be ourselves, does it?
And I want to change that. Like,
More power to you.
we
Yes.
don't always show up looking great. We might have some crust in our eyes. We might be rough looking, but that's who we are. And that's
Yeah,
honest. And just
yeah.
like the reminder of celebrities, quote unquote, these people we've put on this pedestal, they also don't look like that. They have makeup teams and stylists and all these things. And if we all had that, we would look different also. But they're also human and they have
So
good days and
you
bad
work a
days.
lot with youth, right? You work a lot with the youth.
Not
You
as
have
much as I
worked a
did,
lot
but
with.
I'm getting back to it. Yeah.
All right. So you used to work a lot with the youth, but you're not doing that so much right now. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm trying to get back in that space though, with more tending the garden stuff, helping.
Okay, okay. So I was actually heading towards asking you to share some of your experiences of these kind of conversations with the youth, because these are such powerful conversations. And if you've had these conversations with the youth, and what has been their
Mhm.
response to you is what I wanted to know.
Yeah, I have. I've had kids come and tell me that their dad was assaulting them. I've had, because when I work in a mental health facilities, you kind of hear it all when a kid trusts you, they trust you with, it because they're like, I don't know about you. But when they trust you, like to hold that capacity, to hold that energy, and I treat them like anyone else. I think that's the first thing. Stop looking at them
Mhm.
as like they're a child. I'm like, they're a human that has had harm happen to them. So I speak to them on that level. And I'm like, what's going on? What do you need? What would feel good for you right now? I speak to a 15-year-old in a similar way that I'd speak to a 21-year-old in language, right? Because I also believe that people discount the youth. Like they know nothing. And I'm like, you clearly have never worked with them. They are so smart and they know what's going on with them. And like, who am I to be like, so this happened to you? I don't know. I wasn't there. You tell me what your experience was. You tell me what you're feeling. And if you want me to support you, I will use all my resources. But like asking them, and that's also like they don't know, right? And that's when we can step in and then give resources and support them in a way that feels good instead of just telling them. I always believe in talking to someone versus talking at someone.
Yes, yes. That's what we forget all the time. It's really also about laughing with and laughing at. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so much,
yeah.
so much there. Yeah. You also do sex education, right?
Mhm.
Tell me something about that.
When I first got into sexuality education, thought I was leaving mental health. I was like, I'm so tired, I'm so burned out, I'm tired of working in facilities. And then I got into sex ed and I was like, everyone's talking about all the fun stuff, all the toys and the lubes and the condoms and all the parties. But again, as we're talking about, most of us have trauma and
Mm,
don't get to enjoy that part.
mm,
So it's talking and looking at it again as like a holistic thing of like, cool, let's figure out what type of language you need. Let's figure out what type of body mapping that you
mm,
need. I like to look at the body as like a whole circuit board and like
mm.
figuring out what works and what doesn't work for folks. And that is sexuality education, figuring out what your genitals like, figuring out how you like to be touched, figuring out the language. I think words are powerful, knowing that there's a difference between a vulva and a vagina because there's thousands, millions of adults that don't even know there's a difference, right?
Absolutely.
And so just talking, and again, talking to people and any
Yeah.
type of sexuality my favorite is working with kids, teenagers, middle schoolers, 9-year olds, asking them what they know. Again, they know a
Mm,
lot.
mm,
Even adults, what do you know? What is the language that you utilize for this body part? Because
mm,
I think when we're teaching education, meeting people where they are, I
mm.
think should be the jump off point, not just jumping in like, here's all the things I know, because they might be like, yeah, I know this. Can you tell me something else? And you might be missing that point.
Yes. Lovely. I would love to be in one of your classes. Sounds like so much fun.
I try. I think there should be laughter in everything. Even in
Yes.
my trauma classes, I
Yes.
teach 3 classes. I'm like, just so you all know, we will be participating. You're allowed to ask questions. You're also allowed to laugh here. And people were
Yeah.
like, we can laugh? Yeah, you're allowed to laugh. Like, I'm not the laugh person that's like, no, no,
Yeah.
stop it. We're supposed to be sad. No,
Yeah.
laugh. Because I
Yeah.
also believe that laughter is healing.
Yes, it is.
It's good for our souls. It's good for our bodies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Lovely. I can go on talking to you, Jimanekia. I mean, it feels as if like I found a soul sister here. But I do have to bring this to an end, and I hope that our conversation does continue longer than this. Can I just do like a fun rapid fire kind of a four or
Ooh.
five questions with you, like something? Yeah.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited.
Okay. Favorite food,
Sushi.
dream destination,
Bali.
favorite movie,
Oh gosh. Now and then.
best person in your life.
Oh, there's no, I don't have just one. My best friend Sarah.
I'm sure she'll love this. A safe space for you is
My home.
rains make you feel.
Say it again.
Rains make you feel.
Hmm. A lot. It makes me feel a lot.
Okay, your favorite book,
This lullaby.
sexually you are.
Fun. No.
Equality for you. Equality for you is
Needed. Demanded. I'm literally wearing my inclusivity sweatshirt.
lovely. And I just included this question, right? So there you are. Parting words.
I believe you. I don't ever need to meet you. I don't ever need to hear your story, but I believe you when no one else maybe has or will. I believe you. I also know that this isn't all of you and that every day is different and that you're allowed to have days where you don't want to do anything and that that's okay. And that healing, I'm so tired of just this healing thing, but it's not linear. There is no one way that it looks. And it might look one way one day, and the next day you might be a pile of mush. And that's also okay.
It's okay. Beautiful, Jimanekia. Lovely. It is so, so, so beautiful talking to you. Lovely.
Yes.
And I just have to do this formal conclusion because it goes on to different platforms. So, but that's not to say that I'm signing out from you. I'm just doing this formal conclusion here.
Do it.
We will continue to talk about sexual abuse, domestic violence, and other forms of abuse that continue to haunt us to date. We need to have these important conversations because every person deserves the right to be heard, protected, and be free from abuse. If you would like to know more, join us on Sunday afternoons at 3 p.m. for a 3 p.m. Indian IST for a free webinar. We bust myths in order to make home a safe space.
I love
It is
that.
just so beautiful talking to you.
You
I do hope we
too.
can stay connected and have more conversations going
Yeah.
forward.
Let's create some magical healing spaces.
Yes,
There's time. I think there's some things we
yes,
can do.
yes, because I remember the time when I went into my silent zone, the not speaking Vipassana space. The first few days I only vomited and cried. Vomited
Oh
so
yeah.
much that was there inside my body that needed to come out, you know. So I
I
was
cried
just
every day.
vomiting and just
Every day I
that.
cried.
So there is just so much, there is just so much that we can share, and there's some really powerful things that you have said over here that anybody who wants to um, support themselves or support another is going to gain from it. And I think the most important thing that you brought out over here are ways to nurture ourselves. Because
Hmm.
we're people, we're humans, and we also need to look after ourselves, and every day is different.
Every day is different.
Every day is different. Lovely.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.